I'm a data engineer. I never believed in near-death experiences. I thought they were hallucinations, oxygen-starved brains creating comforting delusions. Until I died, and Jesus showed me something about America in 2026 that I can't keep quiet about anymore. My name is Marcus Chen. For 12 years, I built prediction algorithms for financial firms in Manhattan. Numbers, logic, patterns. That was my world. I lived in a perfectly rational universe where everything had an explanation and faith was just another word for wishful thinking. March 14th started like any other Wednesday. I woke up at 6, made my usual black coffee, checked the markets on my phone while I got dressed. The subway was crowded, my calendar was full. I had 3 meetings scheduled, a presentation to refine, and a dinner reservation at 8 with my girlfriend Sarah. Normal, predictable, safe. By noon, I was reviewing code in my office when I felt it, a tightness in my chest that I ignored at first. Probably just stress, too much caffeine. I kept working, but then the pain spread, radiating down my left arm like lightning made of ice. My breathing became shallow. The room started spinning. I managed to stand, managed to take 3 steps toward the door. Then my legs gave out. I hit the floor hard. Someone screamed. Footsteps rushed toward me. I heard my colleague Jake yelling for someone to call 911, his voice distant and muffled like he was shouting underwater. My heart was hammering irregularly, a broken drum inside my ribs. Each beat felt like it might be the last. Then nothing. The pain vanished, the sound stopped. I wasn't in my office anymore. I was floating above my body, looking down at myself, sprawled on that grey corporate carpet. I could see Jake kneeling beside me, his hands shaking as he loosened my tie. I could see the terror on the faces of my co-workers, forming a circle around my lifeless form. I could see the receptionist on the phone, crying while she gave our address to the emergency dispatcher. This can't be happening. This isn't real. But it was real. More real than anything I'd ever experienced. I felt weightless, completely detached from physical sensation. No pain, no fear, just a strange, surreal clarity as I watched paramedics rush into the office 8 minutes later. Watch them rip open my shirt and attach the defibrillator pads. Watch my body jerk violently as they shocked my heart once, twice, 3 times. Time of death, someone said, 11:47 a.m. And then I was moving, not walking, not flying, but gliding through a darkness that had depth and texture. I wasn't scared. I should have been terrified. But instead, I felt this overwhelming sense of being pulled towards something I couldn't see. Something with gravity stronger than anything physics could explain. The darkness began to shift. Pinpricks of light appeared, multiplying exponentially until they formed a tunnel of luminescence that defied every color I'd ever known. These weren't the wavelengths visible to human eyes. They were colors that existed beyond the spectrum, shades that had no names, hues that sang with frequencies my ears couldn't hear, but my soul somehow understood. I was moving faster now, accelerating through this corridor of impossible light. The sensation was intoxicating, pure. I felt layers of myself peeling away, all the pretense and pride and carefully constructed identity dissolving like morning fog. Marcus Chen, the skeptic. Marcus Chen, the logical engineer. Marcus Chen, who needed proof for everything. That person was evaporating, leaving behind something more fundamental, more true. The colors intensified, the tunnel widened. And then I emerged into a space that made my consciousness shatter and reform all at once. I was standing in a realm that shouldn't exist. The ground beneath me, if it could be called ground, was solid yet translucent, like walking on crystallized starlight. The air shimmered with energy I could taste, electric and sweet. Above me, if there was an above, stretched an infinite expanse of what I can only describe as living light, pulsing with rhythms that matched something deep inside me I never knew existed. And I wasn't alone. Beings moved through this space, forms of pure radiance that shifted between shapes human-like one moment and abstract patterns of geometry the next. They didn't speak, but I felt their awareness of me, welcoming and curious. One drifted close, and I felt a wave of love so intense it would have brought me to my knees if I'd had knees to fall on. Where am I? The question formed in my mind, and instantly the answer came, not in words, but in pure knowing. I was in the space between, the threshold, a place where souls pause before continuing their journey. But before I could process that revelation, everything changed. The beings retreated, the light condensed, and I felt a presence approaching that made everything else I'd experienced feel like a prelude, a warm-up for something infinitely more significant. He came toward me, and I knew. I didn't need an introduction. I didn't need a voice from heaven announcing his name. Every particle of my being recognized him with certainty that bypassed all doubt. Jesus. He was radiant yet humble, powerful yet gentle. His face was impossible to fully describe because looking at him was like trying to stare directly into compassion itself. His eyes held depths that contained entire universes of understanding. When he looked at me, really looked at me, I felt completely exposed. Every lie I'd ever told, every person I'd hurt, every moment of arrogance and selfishness, every secret shame I'd buried deep. He knew everything about me, every doubt, every sin, every hidden fear. And he loved me anyway. I couldn't speak, couldn't think. I just stood there or floated there, trembling in the presence of absolute truth. When he spoke, his voice didn't just enter my ears. It resonated through every dimension of my existence, gentle, yet carrying the weight of authority that created galaxies. Marcus, I am showing you this because time is short. What you see concerns 2026. 2026. My mind struggled to grasp the specificity. Why that year? What was coming in 2026? He said the year was significant. A year many had been warned about. A turning point. A moment when choices would crystallize into consequences that would reshape everything. I felt the weight of urgency pressing down on me, not oppressive, but clarifying. This wasn't just a mystical experience. This wasn't a comforting vision to ease my transition from life to death. This was a warning, a mission, a responsibility being placed on shoulders that had never carried anything heavier than the pressure to meet quarterly projections. I don't understand, I tried to say. Why me? I'm nobody. I'm a data engineer who doesn't even believe in this. His expression carried something I can only describe as knowing sadness, like a father watching his child struggle with a lesson they need to learn. Belief is not required for truth to exist, Marcus. You will believe because you will see. Before I could ask what he meant, he turned. And with that turn, the entire realm shifted. America appeared before me. Not the America I knew from maps and news reports and business trips. This was America seen from a perspective that transcended physical geography. I was looking at the spiritual landscape of the nation, and what I saw made my soul tremble. It was beautiful and terrible at once, regions of brilliant light where faith burned pure and prayers rose like incense. But those lights were islands in an encroaching darkness. Shadows spreading like oil spills across the land, thicker and faster with each passing moment. The darkness had texture, density. It moved with purpose. And then I saw them, shadows within the shadows, shapes that defied natural form, entities that existed just beyond the veil of what human eyes normally perceive, slithering through the spiritual atmosphere of the nation like parasites through a bloodstream. Demonic presences. I'd never believed in demons. I'd thought they were medieval superstitions. psychological projections, outdated explanations for mental illness. But there was no doubt now. These were intelligent, malevolent beings operating with strategic precision, infecting, oppressing, deceiving. Jesus' voice cut through my horror. "Look closer, Marcus. See what has infested the hearts of my people." The view zoomed in, and I found myself witnessing specific scenes across America. A church in Texas, where the pastor preached prosperity while darkness coiled around his congregation like chains. A family in Ohio, sitting together at dinner, each person isolated in their own digital world. A grey mist of disconnection settling over the table like ash. A woman in California practicing what she called spirituality, burning sage and setting intentions, while something ancient and cruel whispered through her rituals, masquerading as light. I saw politicians on both sides of the aisle, their words inflaming division, while shadowy figures danced between them, feeding on the hatred like vultures on carrion. I saw entertainment platforms broadcasting content that numbed souls and normalized darkness, each screen a doorway inviting corruption into homes across the nation. The most horrifying part wasn't the obvious evil. It was how subtle it had become, how it wore masks of goodness, how it hid in plain sight, disguised as progress, tolerance, success, even faith itself. And everywhere I looked, I saw the date, 2026. That year glowed in the spiritual realm like a marker, a deadline, a point of no return approaching with the inevitability of an avalanche. Jesus' expression carried such profound sorrow, it made my heart ache. This wasn't the anger of a distant judge. This was the grief of a lover watching his beloved choose poison over water. He spoke again, and his words burned themselves into my memory. "Look closer. See what has infested the hearts of my people. They call evil good and good evil. They have exchanged my truth for lies that comfort them, and they do not realize that what they invite into their lives, into their homes, into their nation, will devour them." I wanted to look away. The scenes were too much, too real, too devastating, but his hand, nails scarred and radiant, gestured toward one more vision forming in the space before us. America, 2026. Specific locations I'd never been, but somehow recognized. Familiar landmarks transformed by spiritual oppression so thick I could almost feel it pressing against my chest, even in this realm between realms. He said, "This is what awaits if hearts do not turn." Look closer, Marcus. See exactly where the darkness is hiding. The vision sharpened, focusing on places that made no sense to me. Not obvious targets, not the locations I would have expected. The darkness was hiding in the last place I could have imagined. The darkness I saw wasn't in the streets. It wasn't in the obvious places of sin or depravity I'd expected to find. It was hidden in the last place I would have looked, in the hearts of those who called themselves believers, in the churches, in the prayer circles, in the very sanctuaries where people gathered to worship his name. I felt Jesus' hand still on my shoulder, his presence anchoring me as the vision continued to unfold. My heart was pounding, not from fear now, but from the shock of what he was showing me. This wasn't what I thought spiritual warfare looked like. "Show me more," I whispered, though part of me wanted to look away. And he did. Suddenly I was standing in a church, not physically, but in this vision state where everything felt more real than reality itself. I could see the congregation dressed in their Sunday best, Bibles clutched in their hands. The worship music was playing. People were lifting their hands in praise. From the outside, it looked perfect, holy, righteous. But Jesus was showing me something else entirely. I saw shadows moving through the aisles, dark, writhing forms that slithered between the pews, invisible to the worshippers, but clear as day to me. They weren't attacking from the outside, they were already inside. And the most terrifying part, these people had invited them in. "Do you see it?" Jesus asked, his voice heavy with sorrow. I nodded, unable to speak. "The judgment begins with my own house," he said. "The enemy knows this. He doesn't need to attack my people from the outside when he can corrupt them from within." I watched as one of the shadows wrapped itself around a woman in the third row. She was singing along to the worship song, her face set in an expression of intense devotion. But the shadow was whispering to her, and I could hear its words as clearly as if it were speaking to me. "You're more righteous than her," it hissed, directing her gaze toward another woman across the aisle. "Look at how she dresses. Look at her worldly choices. You would never fall so low." And I saw pride bloom in that woman's heart like a dark flower. She believed the lie. She wrapped it around herself like armor, convinced it was discernment when it was really judgment. Convinced it was righteousness when it was really spiritual pride. My stomach turned because I recognized that voice. I'd heard it in my own head more times than I could count. Jesus moved me to another scene, a family dinner table, a father, mother, and their adult daughter. The parents were believers, active in their church, respected in their community. The daughter had walked away from the faith years ago. "We're praying for you," the father said, but his tone was cold, condemning. "You need to repent and come back to God," the mother added, her words sharp as knives. I saw the daughter's face crumple. I saw the wall go up around her heart, brick by brick, and I saw the demon standing behind the parents, grinning. It wore the face of righteousness, quoted scripture with ease, used the language of faith to drive wedges between people who should have been bound by love. "This is what breaks my heart," Jesus said, and I could hear the pain in his voice. "They use my name to justify hardness of heart. They quote scripture to condemn rather than redeem, and they call it holiness." The vision shifted again, faster now, showing me scene after scene. Church board meetings where leaders tore each other apart over doctrine while ignoring the hurting in their congregation. Online forums where Christians shredded each other's faith with theological arguments and self-righteous condemnation. Small groups where gossip masqueraded as prayer requests and judgment hid behind concern. In every scene, I saw the same spirit at work. Jesus called it Leviathan, a spirit of deception so subtle, so clever, that it could make people believe they were serving God while actually serving their own pride. It twisted truth just enough to make lies feel like wisdom. It used people's desire to be right, to be holy, to be set apart, and perverted it into something dark and divisive. "They are blind," Jesus said. "They cannot see that I never called them to be judges. I called them to be my hands and feet, to show mercy, to extend grace, to love even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." I felt tears streaming down my face because I saw myself in every scene, every moment of spiritual pride I'd felt, every time I'd judged another believer for not measuring up to my standards. Every person I'd written off as too worldly or not spiritual enough to be worth my time. "Lord, I've done this," I whispered. "I've been part of this darkness." "I know," he said gently. "That's why I'm showing you. Not to condemn you, but to free you." The vision changed one more time. I saw a calendar flipping forward, pages turning faster and faster until it stopped on a date. 2026. "Why does this year matter?" I asked. "In 2026, this will reach a tipping point," Jesus explained. "My people will face a choice they can no longer avoid. They will either humble themselves and return to my true heart, or they will harden their hearts further and fall deeper into deception. The division will become clearer. The line will be drawn." I felt the weight of his words settle over me like a heavy blanket. "America is a spiritual battleground," he continued. "What happens here will ripple across the world, and 2026 will reveal who truly follows me versus who follows their own version of me. the version they've created to justify their judgments, their pride, their refusal to extend the grace I've shown them. My mind was reeling. This wasn't about obvious sin. This wasn't about people turning away from God to pursue worldly pleasures. This was about believers who thought they were serving God while actually serving something far darker. This was about infestation, not possession, permission, not attack. How does this happen? I asked. How do your people become so deceived? It starts small. Jesus said, a moment of pride they don't recognize, a judgment they don't confess, an unforgiveness they hold on to, believing it's justified, and the enemy takes that foothold and builds a fortress. He doesn't need to possess them. He just needs them to believe his lies are my truth. I understood now what he meant by infestation. These weren't people overtaken by demonic possession in the dramatic sense I'd imagined. These were people who had given demons a seat at the table of their hearts through their own choices, through pride, through judgment, through the slow, subtle hardening that comes from choosing to be right over choosing to be loving. They are infested not because I abandoned them, Jesus said, his voice breaking my heart with its tenderness, but because they abandoned my heart for the rules they made in my name. The vision began to fade, and I felt myself being pulled back to my body. But before I left that sacred space, Jesus turned to me, his eyes full of both sorrow and hope. I show you this because I love my people, he said. I want them to see clearly before the choice becomes harder. I want them to examine their hearts now, while there's still time to change. Tell them that I'm calling them back, not to more rules, not to stricter doctrine, but to my actual heart, to mercy, to grace, to the kind of love that changes the world. But Lord, I said, my voice shaking, why me? I'm just an ordinary person. I've been guilty of everything you just showed me. Who am I to carry this message? And then he smiled, not a condescending smile, but one full of warmth and understanding. You doubted, he said. That's exactly why I chose you. Those who are certain they have all the answers won't hear this message. They'll dismiss it, rationalize it away, find reasons why it doesn't apply to them. But you will hear it, because you know your own heart, you know your own weakness, and that makes you the perfect messenger. I felt his hand on my shoulder one last time, a touch so real it seemed to burn itself into my soul. And then I was falling, backward, downward, back into the weight of my physical body. The return was jarring. Suddenly I could feel everything again, the hardness of the floor beneath me, the ache in my chest, the sounds of the ordinary world rushing back in. Car horns, distant sirens, the hum of the refrigerator. My wife's worried voice calling my name. I opened my eyes to find her kneeling beside me, tears streaming down her face, her phone in her hand ready to call for help. I'm okay, I managed to say, though my voice sounded strange to my own ears, distant, changed. But I wasn't okay, not in the way she meant. Everything had changed. The world looked the same furniture, the same walls, the same afternoon light streaming through the windows, but I was different, fundamentally, irrevocably different. Over the next few days, I struggled with what I'd seen. Part of me wanted to dismiss it as a hallucination, a stress-induced vision brought on by some medical event I didn't understand. The doctors found nothing wrong with me. No seizure, no stroke, no explanation for what happened. But I couldn't forget, and I couldn't stay silent. I started paying attention differently. I watched how believers treated each other online, in person, in the news. And everywhere I looked, I saw exactly what Jesus had shown me. The pride, the judgment, the spiritual superiority masquerading as righteousness, the divisions sown in his name, the hardness of heart wrapped in scripture. It terrified me, because I realized how close I'd come to being lost in that darkness myself. How many times I'd been the one creating division instead of building bridges. How often I'd chosen being right over being loving, and I knew I had to share what I'd seen, even if people thought I was crazy, even if they dismissed me or attacked me for it, because Jesus was right. 2026 is coming, and the choice is real. If you're watching this right now, I want you to ask yourself something, and I want you to be honest, brutally, painfully honest. Are you following Jesus? The real Jesus who ate with sinners, who chose mercy over sacrifice, who told his followers to love their enemies and pray for those who persecute them? Or are you following a version of Jesus you've created to justify your judgments, your pride, your refusal to extend grace? Because here's the truth Jesus showed me. The demons aren't coming from outside the church. They're being invited in through the front door by people who think they're defending the faith. They're welcomed in through pride, through judgment, through the belief that we are somehow more righteous, more worthy, more deserving than those we look down on. The infestation isn't about possession, it's about permission. Permission we give through small compromises, through justified anger, through the slow hardening of our hearts, while we convince ourselves we're just standing firm in truth. And 2026 is coming. Jesus said it would be a tipping point, a moment when the choice becomes clearer, harder to avoid. We will either humble ourselves and return to his true heart, or we will harden further and fall deeper into deception. The time for self-examination is now, not later, not when it's more convenient. Now, examine your heart today. Look at how you treat other believers, especially those you disagree with. Look at how you speak about people who have fallen away from faith. Look at the pride you carry, the judgments you hold, the unforgiveness you justify. And ask yourself, is this what Jesus would do? Is this the heart he showed when he walked this earth? Or is this something else wearing his name? I can't make this choice for you. No one can. But I can tell you what I saw. I can tell you that Jesus is calling his people back to mercy, back to grace, back to the kind of radical, uncomfortable, sacrificial love that actually changes hearts instead of just confirming our own righteousness. Don't let spiritual pride infest your soul. Don't let the enemy use your desire to be right to create division and darkness. Choose humility, choose love, choose the real Jesus, not the one we've made in our image to justify our hardness, but the one who came to seek and save the lost, who extended grace to the broken, who reserved his harshest words not for sinners, but for the religious leaders who had lost sight of God's heart. 2026 is coming, the choice is ours, and I'm praying desperately, earnestly praying that we choose wisely, that we choose love, that we choose him, not the version of him we've created, but the real Jesus, the one who is still calling us home.